Welcome back. So today I was reflecting on one of my most recent friendships or relationships. Friendship is a friendship that went south. My response to feeling emotionally unsafe in that relationship, how unhealthy and maladaptive my response was. And something occurred to me as I reflected on this relationship demise that never really occurred to me before. And I was able to put all of the dots together. Before, it was just like this cloud of emotion that I couldn't really explain. And now I know exactly what led to me feeling the way I felt. And I also feel like this is a huge learning experience because I understand some actions that I could have taken that may have been more adaptive, that may have caused a different result in the overall relationship, and at the very minimum would have made me feel better with, if the relationship still needed to end, how it ended, that didn't cause me to have the amount of guilt I experienced from my behavior. And so it was also a huge learning experience for me. And that's why I've chosen to come in and share an actual story time with more detail than I typically disclose on here. However, I want to make it clear that I'm focusing on my behavior and my perception, and I am not here to place blame on somebody else because I cannot change anybody else, and I don't really know without having a conversation what someone else's true motives are. And that conversation didn't happen, and I take responsibility. But I think it's a valuable life lesson that is worth sharing. Before I get into the actual story time, I want to sort of set a foundation and expectation about how I'm sharing this event and how I am storing this event within myself to learn from it. The first thing is, there are two things. There are behaviors and there are perceptions of behaviors. I don't discount that observed behavior is real. That is a real thing. You observe somebody behaving in a way, that is something that is real. And I don't gaslight myself and say, no, I didn't observe that. That didn't happen. I'm making that up. No, if I have observed a behavior, it's a real thing. The second thing is there's perception of that behavior. And the perception may or may not be real. I may be perceiving a behavior in a negative way, or in a way of I'm internalizing it as that behavior is intended to cause harm to me. However, my perception could potentially be wrong or misunderstood. And so that is one thing that I'm taking as a learning from this. My perception could be correct. It could be absolutely correct. And I think sometimes some behaviors that we see doesn't need a fact check. There's some obvious behaviors that we see and we perceive it exactly as it is, like disrespect. Like if you're, for example, if you're in a conversation with someone and they just start cussing you out and calling you all kinds of names, you're observing a disrespectful behavior and a behavior that is intended to cause harm to you because somebody is disrespecting you and it's very overt. So sometimes you don't need to say, did you mean to insult me and disrespect me by calling me you don't need that. So I just kind of want to set that ground thing. So this friend and I, we belong to a group. And in that group, there were some things happening, some projects happening that involved other group members. And in conversation, which this friend and I, we would kind of have our side conversations about people, the things they did, and the things that annoyed us, which I now realize is a destructive way to relate to somebody because it can be considered gossip. Sometimes I get a little bit confused between what is gossip and what is processing with a safe person. But in this instance, there are some ways that I related in conversation that I do regret and I don't think were productive. They didn't benefit the friendship with this person. They didn't benefit my attitude towards people in the group. It just was not a very good way to relating to somebody by talking to about other people, whether you're bringing them down or not. But sometimes it just isn't, it's not a good way to relate to people. However, there are times that you need to process things that are happening with someone who is experiencing the same thing. And I think for the most part, that was the intention of these conversations, but sometimes it did teeter the line. So that's something I'm trying to grow in and learn from, how I discuss things that happen with people that don't teeter the line of gossip. So that's just an aside. But we were talking about certain people and things they were doing. And the friend asked me, said, hey, myself and this person decided we're going to dislike this person for an entire year. Do you want to join? And I was like, no, I don't think I can commit to something like that. But I kind of passed it off as a joke and didn't really think about it again. So something was going on and we were having a meeting coming up, and I was a little bit upset about the thing that we were meeting about and how it was communicated. And I was getting really frustrated because I really didn't understand what was going on behind the scenes, and that there was, in my perception, an alliance with my friend and some of the other people in the group. And so I was kind of discussing that with this friend, and this friend was telling me, was kind of cold, behaving kind of cold and distant and indifferent in the conversation, not as caring as they typically did when I was expressing frustrations with them. And then that friend told me maybe I shouldn't even show up to the meeting. So then we had the meeting, and I realized a lot of what I've observed. What I observed was behavior of the friend and the other person that she brought up as a person to join in this dislike alliance. I observed behavior that seemed to me like they were being difficult to this member and unnecessarily. That's what I observed. And that's how I perceived it. And afterwards, after that happened, I reached out to the friend a couple times. And then I also realized that they weren't reaching out to me anymore. That's a behavior that was real. Their communication with me seemed to have changed. It changed. And I perceived, oh, because I am not co-signing on treating someone this way. And I also thought they were serious about not liking this person. They are serious about being difficult. And I can't roll all the way with that. And my perception was, because I am not in agreement with this behavior and this attitude, then I am no longer of value, that you are now devaluing me. That's how I perceived that. And it caused an extreme reaction that I now know is because of some trauma that I've experienced in my life growing up, trauma that's been reinforced with other friendships and I just cut this person off. Literally, I just blocked them on everything, and I canceled a trip that we planned in conjunction without warning. I just canceled my part of the trip. And so that was the wrong way to respond in that situation. And I felt guilty about it. I was a little bit ashamed because I know I knew better. And even though that's a behavior I've had in the past, I felt that is not a behavior that I currently want to have. That's not how I want to resolve conflict. That's not how I want to show up in relationships. It was very extreme. It was very impulsive. That response did not match up to actually what was happening. Not at all. I did attempt to make an amends with this person, and I did reach out to this person and ask if they wanted to sit down and talk about it. And I did try to make an amends, and I did what I needed to do to make it right as far as the trip to the best of my ability. They did not want to speak to me, which I completely understand, because imagine being on the other end of that. Why would you want to talk to me? Why would you? That was crazy. Like that would be kind of like, nah, yeah. So I get it. The connection I made is that the behaviors that I observed threaten my emotional safety in a way where it brought up a trigger of, if I am not performing for you the way you want me to perform, then I am of no value to you. That's a huge trigger for me that goes all the way back to my childhood. A couple of things that made me feel that way. The person changing the way that they responded to me when we were talking, telling me I didn't need to be at the meeting. That happened. That really happened. But my perception was, you're saying because I don't agree with you, I won't bring value to this meeting. That perception was not questioned. They may have been saying you don't need to be at the meet. Yeah, don't come to the meeting. They may have been saying that with intention to be protective, like, you seem really upset about this. Yeah, don't come then, because maybe it'll upset you more. I was also reading some other things into it, the tone in their voice and things like that, that made me feel like that wasn't how they were saying it. But still, I did not explore that with this person. I did not give this person an opportunity to clarify their intention at all. I just cut them off. That is the nutshell. The reason why I'm still thinking about and tussling over is because I've been working on myself for so long and trying to find safe relationships, and I consider myself to be more healthy now, and this happened in what I considered during a time of a healthy me and during a time of me finding healthy relationships that this happened. What I take from that is that, one is having an attitude of curiosity versus an immediate response of, I'm unsafe. People are doing the best they can with the tools that they have. And sometimes the best is got to get to safety. And you realize, okay, that was extreme. I got to come back and I got to make this right now, because what I did was, the way I handled that wasn't right. That was wrong. And I have to correct this. Sometimes that's just the best we can do. And I won't ever tell anyone that they did something wrong by taking care of themselves with something that is so important, which is your safety, physical and emotional safety. I will never tell anyone or myself that I am doing something wrong by taking care of my physical and emotional safety. I do try to take care of my physical and emotional safety without causing harm to other people. And that is something that this lesson has been teaching me and really forcing me to take a look at, is how to do that. This is a learning opportunity for me. Maybe I am perceiving completely wrong. There's something else going on that I have no clue about, because I'm only thinking about myself, because naturally people are very self-centered and selfish. And that is something that I have to consider. A lot of the times I'm thinking about myself, like how I'm perceiving it, my safety, my emotions, what's going on with me. And that's just everybody. We don't like to talk about it. We don't like to say it. We don't like to be truthful about it, but it's true. We're thinking about ourselves most of the time. And that's also what causes a lot of problems in our lives. And here's an example of that. By giving this person an opportunity to let them know what I'm experiencing and talking about it, maybe it would have turned out differently. Maybe what I'm observing is also showing me information that, hey, I might need to distance myself from this person, but there's a way to do that that's kind, more respectful, and not so emotionally dysregulated. And the other thing is, I have to sit back and look at this experience and realize how much energy I brought into it, how much of my unhealed past trauma with friends informed what was happening. Because of all of that unhealed trauma with friends and the way I've been treated in the past by people and some really terrible things I've experienced. And I'm not just talking about your run-of-the-mill friendship breakup here. I'm talking about I was robbed by a friend. So because of all of that, things that I observed and behaviors I observed were very much informed by past information. I have the potential to unfairly characterize someone as manipulative and toxic and harmful when, even though they may be showing some behaviors that are unpleasant, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're a dangerous person and that I need to run for the hills like what I did. I'm really trying to work on better ways to relate to people. You know, you showed up in a way that you don't want to show up in that way anymore. You know, you treated someone in a way that you don't want to treat people and you don't want to be treated. Then the next thing to do is to go and try to make it right and to make that amends. Otherwise, it's really hard to move forward. It's really hard to continue to have that self-esteem when you're having these things happen and you're not doing the next right thing in response to what happened. But mistakes are going to happen. We are going to act out of character because we're human beings and we make mistakes and we seek safety, and that's normal. And I think it's okay to normalize having healthy discussions around the real need for you people to feel emotionally and physically safe in their relationships. And how do we get there? And what are we looking for? What types of things are we taking in? And how are we taking that information in and perceiving it and applying it to what's actually going on? And sometimes it could be really confusing and we don't always get it right all the time. Sometimes we get it wrong. I'm working on trying to establish boundaries and safety with people, because there could be things that you observe in a friendship or relationship and it turns out to be a negative behavior that you're disapproving of, but that doesn't mean the relationship has to end. The way you interact with that person might adjust a little bit. You can continuously reevaluate your friendships and relationships and adjust the way you show up. There's lots of healthy ways to deal with these things as they come up. And I'm working on learning those more adaptive ways to resolving conflict. It is not a pleasant experience to recognize that you are in an emotionally manipulative relationship. That's the thing. I refuse to find myself in another emotionally or physically unsafe relationship, which is also informing my decisions, which is also why sometimes my response to things can be extreme because of where I've been and what I've experienced in life. But that's also my responsibility. My work to do is to find ways to keep myself safe and relate to people that are adaptive and not maladaptive. So I can recognize today that I may have been able to keep myself safe in that relationship and with what was going on by having a mature conversation. I hope this story time did help someone, and I hope everyone continues to have a great week.